Most people know the DeLorean as the car from Back to the Future. A few know it as the car from a cocaine arrest. Almost nobody knows the full story. The man behind it invented an entire era of American cars, was weeks away from running the biggest auto company on Earth, and then walked away from all of it. John Zachary DeLorean was born on January 6, 1925, in Detroit. His father Zachary was a Romanian immigrant who worked the line at Ford. His mother kept the family together through the Depression with whatever work she could find. John grew up in Detroit public housing and attended Cass Technical High School, the same institution that had once educated Preston Tucker. He was a gifted student. He earned a scholarship to Lawrence Institute of Technology and graduated in 1948 with a degree in mechanical engineering. He wasn't done. He went on to earn a master's in automotive engineering from the Chrysler Institute, the same in-house graduate school that trained engineers directly for the industry. He started at Chrysler, lasted a year, moved to Packard, where he rose quickly to head of research and development. That's where General Motors found him. In 1956, GM made him an offer almost nobody received. Come work for us in any division you choose. He picked Pontiac. At the time, Pontiac was one of the weakest divisions in the company. Sales were flat, the cars were boring. Nobody inside GM wanted the assignment. DeLorean saw a blank page. By 1961, he was chief engineer at Pontiac. GM had a strict internal rule in place: no engine larger than 330 cubic inches in an intermediate-sized car. The policy existed to keep divisions from stepping on each other and to stop the company from being blamed for encouraging racing on public roads. DeLorean disagreed with it. He believed a generation of young Americans had money in their pockets and speed on their minds, so he broke the rule. He took a 389 cubic inch V8 engine, far beyond the limit, and dropped it into a mid-size Pontiac Tempest. He called the result the GTO. He even stole the name from Ferrari, where it stood for Gran Turismo Omologato, a designation given to cars certified for motorsport competition. It meant nothing on a Pontiac. It sounded like everything. To avoid a full management review, he released the GTO as an optional package rather than a standalone model. GM's executives didn't have to approve it directly. By the time they noticed what had happened, the car was already in dealerships. In its first year, 1964, the GTO sold 32,450 units. The second year, over 75,000. Within 2 years, every major American manufacturer had copied the formula. Ford responded with the Mustang, Chevrolet with the Camaro, Dodge with the Challenger. The muscle car era, the defining American automotive movement of the 1960s, existed because one engineer at Pontiac broke an internal policy and bet on what he thought young people wanted. He was right, and for the first time in automotive history, a car had been built not for the driver's parents, but specifically for the driver. The industry had never thought to do that before. The cultural shift was immediate and enormous. The GTO wasn't just a car. It was the opening shot of a war between Detroit and the baby boom generation. Young Americans with paychecks and no mortgages wanted speed, and they wanted it cheap. DeLorean had given it to them at a price they could actually afford. Sales climbed from 32,450 in 1964 to over 96,000 by 1966. Motor Trend named it Car of the Year. Rolling Stone covered it. It became the car of a generation the same way the Beatles were the band of a generation, something that felt like it had been made specifically for them, by someone who actually understood what they wanted. GM rewarded him immediately. In 1965, he became head of Pontiac, the youngest divisional head in company history. He followed the GTO with the Firebird in 1967 and the redesigned Grand Prix in 1969. He wore turtlenecks to executive meetings. He dated fashion models. He drove European sports cars. He invested in the San Diego Chargers and later the New York Yankees. He looked nothing like a GM executive was supposed to look, and performed better than almost any of them. By the late 1960s, DeLorean had become something no GM executive had ever been, a celebrity. He appeared on talk shows. He was profiled in magazines that had never previously covered car executives. He married Kelly Harmon in 1969, daughter of football legend Tom Harmon, then model Christina Ferrar in 1973, a relationship that made the society pages as much as the automotive press. He dyed his hair, he got a chin implant, he wore jeans to board meetings. His colleagues at GM found him insufferable. The public found him fascinating. In 1969, GM moved him to lead Chevrolet, the largest division in the company, accounting for more vehicles sold than Ford's entire lineup. He reorganized it. Sales recovered. By 1972, He had been promoted to vice president of North American car and truck operations. His salary reached $650,000 a year. He was 2 steps from the presidency of all of General Motors. Then on April 2, 1973, he resigned. He told the press he wanted to pursue work in the social arena. Few believed him. Inside the company, there were suggestions he had been pushed. Others said he had reached a point where playing the political game had become unbearable. The truth was probably somewhere between the two. What is certain is this: the moment he walked out, the era he had built walked out with him. The 1973 OPEC oil embargo hit that same year. Fuel prices quadrupled. The muscle car died practically overnight. Pontiac's GTO was discontinued in 1974. What DeLorean had created at GM, the aggressive, youth-focused, performance-first car culture, evaporated in a matter of months. By October 1975, he had founded the DeLorean Motor Company. His vision was specific: a sports car unlike anything else on the American market. A rear-engine coupe, stainless steel body, gull-wing doors. He hired Italian design legend Giorgetto Giugiaro to draw it and brought in Colin Chapman of Lotus Cars to handle the engineering underneath. He originally wanted to call the car the DMC-12 with a projected price of $12,000. By the time it reached production, the price had more than doubled to $25,000, a cost that would prove fatal. He shopped the project to several governments looking for a manufacturing home. Puerto Rico was a serious candidate. Then the British government made contact. Northern Ireland in the late 1970s was in the worst stretch of the Troubles. West Belfast had unemployment rates among the highest in Europe. Bombs, shootings, and sectarian violence had driven away investment for a decade. The British government needed something that could bring stable employment to the region. They offered DeLorean approximately £80 million in grants, loans, and guarantees to build his factory in Dunmurry, just outside Belfast. Construction began in 1978. What nobody fully reckoned with was what it meant to build a precision manufacturing facility in a city at war with itself. During the factory's construction and early operation, West Belfast was in the middle of the 1981 hunger strikes. Bobby Sands and 9 other IRA prisoners died in HMP Maze that year, triggering riots that swept through the streets within miles of the Dunmurry plant. On at least one occasion, fire from nearby violence reached the factory grounds and destroyed design blueprints and worker records. A £14 million insurance claim DeLorean submitted to the British government for damages caused during the unrest was never paid. The workers showed up anyway. They were building something in a place that had been told it couldn't build anything. The facility was designed for a projected capacity of 30,000 cars per year. It eventually employed 2,500 workers, most of them local, most of them with no prior automotive manufacturing experience. The first DMC-12 rolled off the line on January 21, 1981. The brushed stainless steel panels needed no paint and caught the light differently depending on the angle. The gull-wing doors swung straight up. The car sat low to the ground. Nothing else on the road looked remotely like it, but underneath the styling there were serious compromises. The original plan had called for a powerful mid-mounted Wankel rotary engine. When development problems killed that option, the team substituted a rear-mounted PRV V6, a shared engine developed jointly by Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo. It produced 130 horsepower. The car weighed 2,718 pounds. 0 to 60 took around 10.5 seconds. A Corvette of the same era cost $18,000 and was dramatically quicker. The stainless steel exterior showed every fingerprint and watermark. It was nearly impossible to paint if you wanted a different color. Quality control at the Belfast plant was uneven. The production schedule had been compressed. The workforce was learning as they went, and early cars had issues that American dealers had to fix before delivery. Reviewers were divided. Most praised the looks, most criticized the performance, and behind the scenes, there was something worse. In 1982, British investigators discovered that Colin Chapman, the Lotus founder who had handled the DMC-12's engineering, had allegedly diverted approximately £4 million of DeLorean Motor Company funds into a secret Swiss bank account. The money had been paid to a company called GPD Services, which was controlled by Chapman and a business partner. Chapman denied everything. On December 16, 1982, just weeks after DeLorean's arrest, Chapman died of a sudden heart attack at his home in Norfolk. He was 54 years old. The investigation into the missing funds died with him. DeLorean later claimed in a lawsuit that he had been deceived and defrauded by the people he trusted most to build his car. The British courts eventually agreed, in part, and awarded damages, but by then none of it mattered. Sales fell short of every projection. By the end of 1981, unsold cars were sitting in storage lots across the United States, and the company was running out of time. The arrest DeLorean spent the first months of 1982 trying to keep the factory alive. His creditors set a deadline. He needed £10 million fast. He was calling everyone he had ever known. The FBI had been watching DeLorean's financial collapse and identified him as vulnerable. That spring, a man named James Hoffman reached out to him. Hoffman was a former neighbor in California. He was also an active FBI informant who had his own federal drug charge pending and was working to reduce his sentence by delivering high-profile arrests. He told DeLorean he could connect him with investors. The investors were undercover federal agents. On October 19, 1982, DeLorean was arrested in a hotel room in Los Angeles. The FBI had video of him appearing to agree to a deal involving $24 million worth of cocaine, 20 pounds of it. He faced charges that, if he had been convicted, carried a maximum sentence of 72 years. 1 week after his arrest, DMC filed for bankruptcy. The factory in Belfast closed. 2,500 jobs disappeared. At trial in 1984, DeLorean's attorney Howard Weitzman argued entrapment. Hoffman, a man with his own drug charges who had approached DeLorean rather than the other way around, had manufactured the deal, escalated it, and brought in federal agents to close it. DeLorean had no prior criminal record. He had needed money desperately, and someone had offered him what looked like a way out. The jury agreed. On August 16, 1984, DeLorean was acquitted on all counts. He walked out of court free. Here is the part almost nobody puts together. His legal problems, however, were not over. A British fraud investigation had been running parallel to the American cocaine trial, and DeLorean faced separate charges in the United Kingdom related to the misuse of investor funds. Those charges were eventually dropped. Then came the civil lawsuits, from investors, from former employees, from the British government. DeLorean fought them for years. He wrote a book. He gave interviews. He appeared on television looking polished and composed, the same quality control he had always applied to himself. But the money was going out faster than it was coming in, and there were no more divisions to run, no more empires to rebuild. Here is the part almost nobody puts together. DeLorean's acquittal came in August 1984. Back to the Future began filming the same year. It was released on July 3, 1985. The filmmakers had originally planned for Doc Brown's time machine to be a refrigerator. Then a refrigerator was built into a truck. Director Robert Zemeckis eventually decided he wanted a car. Co-writer Bob Gale has said publicly that the DeLorean's name recognition, driven directly by the 1982 cocaine arrest, is what made the DM-12 the obvious choice. It was futuristic looking, it was already infamous, and audiences would recognize it instantly. The movie made $381 million at the global box office. It produced 2 sequels. The DeLorean became one of the most recognized vehicles in cinema history. Owners' clubs formed on every continent. DeLorean received nothing from it. No licensing fee, no royalties, no credit beyond his name on the car. He declared personal bankruptcy in 1999. He died on March 19, 2005, in New Jersey, from complications following a stroke. He was 80 years old. Approximately 6,500 of the original DMC-12s are estimated to survive today. They sell at auction for $40,000 to over $100,000. The car that failed commercially, the car that took down its creator, collapsed a British government investment and ended with a drug arrest on video, is now one of the most celebrated classics in the world. The GTO he created at Pontiac, the car GM's management tried to block, went on to inspire generations of American muscle cars that are still being built today. John DeLorean invented an era of American cars that other companies turned into billions of dollars. He built a factory in a community that desperately needed it. And the thing people remember most is a car in a movie he had nothing to do with, that came out after everything he built was already gone. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.